My name is Mia Xie, and I'm an associate professor of East Asian literatures in the Department of Asian Societies, Cultures, and Languages at Dartmouth. I would like to first express my thanks to the Department of Asian Societies, Cultures, and Languages, my hearty home department, the John Sloan Dickey Center for International Understanding, the Leslie Center for the Humanities, the Department of Film and Media Studies, and the program in Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at Dartmouth for your generous sponsorship, as well as to more than 30 faculty and staff colleagues at Dartmouth and from WISE who helped coordinate Shiori Itō's visit at Dartmouth. In the past few days, I, like many of you in this community, have had the double pleasure of enjoying the best season of the area and being inspired by all sorts of events by Itō Shiori. We had a phenomenal screening on Monday, an intimate lunch talk at Allen House on Tuesday, a soon-to-be phenomenal conversational panel with Professor Susan Brison now, and we will also have a masterclass on filmmaking tomorrow at 12:15, so check it out. It's at the Department of Film and Media Studies. We have an exhibition, Becoming Home, that features Itō Shiori and Keke Shirasam's video and photo work. It's called Becoming Home. There is a guest book on that exhibition, so if you have anything to say to Shiori, you can leave your words there. She also visited 4 classes and had many inspiring communications with our students. Now, I would like to introduce the 2 speakers of the day, after which I will turn the floor over to them, and we will also have open Q&A at the very end of the event. Shiori Itō is an Oscar and BAFTA-nominated documentary filmmaker, journalist, writer, and co-founder of Hanashi Films, which focuses on gender-based human rights issues. Director Itō gained international attention after speaking out about her experience of rape, a case that became a landmark for the Me Too movement in Japan. In 2017, Itō published the memoir Black Box, which became a bestseller in Japan. In the same year, she formally filed a civil suit against Noriyuki Yamaguchi and won the suit in 2019. Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people in 2020. In 2024, her documentary, Black Box Diaries, was released to critical acclaim, garnering a Peabody Award and a nomination for Best Documentary Feature Film at the 97th Academy Awards. She is also the newest No More ambassador, and No More is a global initiative comprised of the largest coalition of nonprofits, government agencies, schools, and individuals addressing domestic and sexual violence. Next, Professor Susan Brison. Susan Brison is Susan and James Wright Professor of Computation and Just Communities and Professor of Philosophy at Dartmouth College, where she is also director of the Susan and James Wright Center for the Study of Computation and Just Communities. She is the author of Aftermath, Violence and the Remaking of a Self. The book was first published by Princeton University Press in 2002, and a 20th anniversary edition was published in 2023. Now a classic in feminist philosophy and written following a violent sexual assault and physical attack she survived. The book is at once a personal narrative of recovery and a philosophical exploration of trauma. She is also the co-editor of Contemporary Perspectives on Constitutional Interpretation, 1993, and Free Speech in the Digital Age, 2019. and has published articles in academic journals such as Ethics, Hypatia, and Science, and in magazines such as The New York Times and The Guardian. Now let's welcome our speakers.
Thank you. We are so thrilled to be here, and I want to start by congratulating Shiori on this, and Mia, thanking Mia for organizing these 3 days, these wonderful events, and congratulating Shiori on all of the things that you've accomplished, and for having the stamina to get through these 3 days where you're busy going to classes, going to lunches and dinners. And I know many of you, all of my students, were present at the screening of Black Box Diaries, and it was so moving, and the discussion afterwards was so illuminating. Yeah. I just want to applaud you again for that extraordinary accomplishment.
Again, good conversation comes with good questions, so
yes, and they have more today.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much we will say about the different assaults that we survived. I think most of you are familiar with Shiori's story. But I'll start by saying that they were very different rapes. Mine that I write about occurred in 1990 in southern France. I was 35 years old. It was not a difficult rape to talk about or to report. I was grabbed by someone from behind on a road and thrown off the road and beaten and strangled into unconsciousness several times and left for dead at the bottom of a ravine. Now, if I had not reported it, it would still be a crime against the state. The assailant was found. There was plenty of physical evidence, so much so that at the trial, which took place 2.5 years later, even the defense lawyer congratulated me on my strength. And the only thing in question was whether he had been insane at the time of the assault. And if that had been the case, then there would have been, this was in France, ni crime, ni délit, no crime, no. But I was absolutely convinced that he knew just what he was doing. We were talking to each other. He said he had to kill me. He was responsible for the assault. Now, the assault that you survived and that you so bravely reported was very different. Do you want us to say a few words about that before I launch into some questions for you?
I was so lucky to receive Susan's amazing book, Aftermath. And I just checked into Hanover Inn and I received your book with amazing, beautiful notes in it. And it was just like opening up another page of my book. I know we had completely different experience in different time, different place. But I think we share a lot. And how you put it, how you describe it, like I was murdered there. I think I also used a similar word. My soul was murdered. I'm still living. I know my skin is here, and it seems same still till yesterday, but I wasn't myself anymore, and I felt like that. So that I really feel it was similar. Yet, I think growing up in Japan, being in a society where it's really taboo to talk about sexual violence and how stigmatized this topic is. And my case didn't happen on the street. It happened by someone I respected, someone I dared to think that he would do something like that. And I believe I was drugged. But when I went to the police, there were no way for them to test, so I couldn't have a proof, and I cannot say, but I suspect because I lost conscious, and when I woke up from the restaurant to the hotel, I was in a hotel. And I think when you lose your memory, it was really difficult thing for me to support myself, to support my memory, and to regain what happened. Like, yeah, to just connect everything. He wasn't the rapist I thought he would be, and it took me 5 days to go to police. And I was scared because the person was very close to Prime Minister at that time, written biography of him, and he thought he has other powerful friends around him. And I knew, as you know, starting up as like young journalist, it's gonna be no one gonna believe me. So yeah, there are so many conversations happened before I went to police. Yeah.
And I understand that completely. I mean, even though I was, except when I was unconscious, I was conscious during the assault. I never forgot it. I remembered it. Still, for months, I would wake up in the morning and say, that couldn't have happened. You know, and if I hadn't had so much confirmation from all the people around me, it might have been possible to think, oh, that was just a nightmare. When something so unbelievable happens, it's very difficult to take it in and accept, yes, that happened. That's a fact. That's part of my life. And now I just need to know how to go on from here. I did also write more recently about having been raped when I was 20, when I was a student in England. I didn't talk about that until 10 years ago. That was decades ago. And the only reason I wrote about it was because at that time, many victims of Bill Cosby were speaking out, and they said they were raped by him 30 years ago, 35, 40 years ago. And journalists were saying, oh, well, if you were raped, you would have gone to the police, or why didn't you talk about it then? I didn't even think what happened to me when I was sleeping in my room and I let in a friend and I was raped. I didn't call it rape. There was nothing to report. That was not rape. And so the courage that you showed and the tenacity of continuing to speak about this and report this is truly, truly remarkable. And in spite of the fact that our assaults, the ones we wrote about, were so very different, I was so struck by the many similarities. And one of the things was how clueless the criminal justice system was. I mean, I was very fortunate because nobody doubted my story. At the same time, my own lawyer said, don't think of your assailant as a man. Think of him as a wild beast, a lion. And I'm saying to myself, he's a Frenchman, like you. You know, who are you to tell me how to think about this? And before the trial, when I met with the Attorney General and we went over the facts of the case, he told me how things were going to proceed. As I was leaving his office, he said, Madame, when the trial is over, you must forget that this ever happened. And I said, but, that's going to be a little difficult. He said, but Madame, you must make an effort. So even though both of us spoke out and wrote books, and you made a documentary to bear witness to something much larger than ourselves, it was very difficult to give testimony to that in a court of law. Even in my case, where there was a conviction, I wasn't able to testify to the global problem of violence against women everywhere, all the time. The only thing in question was, did that man, that bad man, do that thing to you on that occasion, and with or without your consent? But I think, and you write about this too, if we're going to change the society, we need to start talking about the society.
Right.
And what are the conditions under which boys and girls are socialized, on situations in which women who do come forward aren't believed. I was struck by the fact that one of the investigators said to you, oh, well, this sort of thing just happens all the time. But at the same time, I mean, in Japan, in France, where I was assaulted, here, there is a remarkable reluctance to acknowledge that there is such a thing as gender-based violence against women. it's not a thing. You know, somebody might be assaulted here or there, but if it's a stranger, it's random and it's a wild beast. And if it's an acquaintance, well, there was miscommunication and mixed messages, and maybe there was some. People don't understand that it is a major global phenomenon.
Very universal. Yeah.
Yeah. So the cluelessness. I was so struck by the questions you were asked.
Thank you so much for all the.
Oh my gosh,
Wow,
this is the
beautiful.
book. I recommend it to everybody. I don't put pencil, pen, I don't put ink in books or highlighters, I put pencil, but I use a lot of Post-its to make notes. But this was an investigator questioning you, said, can you give me the exact time when you woke up, you know, in the hospital after having been drugged and raped? And you calculated it. I mean, within about 20 minutes, I was astonished when you talked about that at the screening. And then he said, no, it wasn't then. It was 5:30, 5:50. It wasn't 5:30. You need to know the exact time. Your memory can't be vague. He said, it won't hold up in court unless you're 100% sure. And how will you prove it to the defense? In court, they'll ask why you don't know anything more. And this is a perennial problem. I mean, in my case, it didn't happen in the courtroom, but when I was giving my deposition to a police officer, I was in my hospital bed. First of all, he was really obsessed with what was my assailant wearing. I couldn't remember. I was looking at his face to see whether I was going to live. That's all I. And then he said, and during the times when you did lose consciousness, for how long were you unconscious? What? But the most clueless thing that you were put through, that I'm still having trouble wrapping my mind around it, is that you were made to reenact the assault with a life-size doll.
Yes.
And in a room with male investigators and no women. This is just horrific. I mean, this is definitely a second rape. This was, do they still do this?
Well, so they do have this guideline how to handle sexual violence case in police station, and it advises that you shouldn't do such a traumatic, maybe something that trigger trauma, which is, reenactment. But then it was still going, and I didn't know. And I later found out that year, only 4% of cases are reported. Doesn't mean that's the prosecuted. 4% get reported, only 4%. And that made me realize, okay, if I know I have to do this reenactment nightmare, and being photographed, my best friend was always next to me, so she begged them to be in the room, and they said no. And another thing is that when I first went to police, I was asking, can I speak to a female officer? And she came in. I talked this story for the first time, sobbing. I put all my energy in. Took a couple hours, and then she said, I'm so sorry, but I'm from traffic department. You have to talk to my investigator, who is my male boss. And I had to talk to him. And then that's what he said, you know what, these things happens a lot and you shouldn't. And later, then I realized only 8% of women in police organization, and often they were working for traffic department or accounting, not many women in power are in police. So it's so difficult to I guess, to address this problem in our authorities. And it was more like, so I in the end, I spoke to 7, 8, I don't know, so many different investigators, so they can check if I'm not lying like this, if my memory is matching. And I felt I'm the one who's been investigated.
Yes.
And that was really interesting thing. Like you said, I was too naive. I thought if I go, they will take the case, and they didn't. So I have to navigate them. I know which hotel I can run out of. They didn't take my case, but I begged one of them. The hotel might gonna delay the CCTV after a week, so can we please try and go and look? And we found something. So and that wasn't still yes from them to take the case. It still took a long time for them to take the case. But yeah, so I didn't understand that the society I was living in, the judicial system I was believing, was like that. So it was great lesson learned. Yeah, and I guess you don't know that. You don't learn what to do. And when you go to police, how can you talk about it? Or, I also didn't know that I should have go straight away so I can present my physical evidence. I washed my body right away because I felt, so yeah, I wish I had that 101 book to tell me what to do. Even though if I had a book, I don't know if I could have gone through. But yeah, so realize how, I guess, also I felt I've been very ignorant of the law we were holding in Japan, which was going on for 110 years, when women didn't even have a voting right. So makes sense. Yeah, it doesn't really support survivors of sexual violence. And so yeah, I was like, how did I survive? How did I live? But one of the reasons why it made me go to report is that because the first person I met after the assault, few hours after, was my little sister. And it was Saturday morning, and I was living in Harajuku, and she wanted to go to this newly open, beautiful, trendy Hawaiian pancake place, and we went there together. But then before we go, I told her, please wait a minute, because I was just spaced out, and she came and I forgot that we had an appointment. And I told her I gotta just run to a hospital, and everything is fine. I couldn't tell her. And I went to a gynecologist asking for a morning after pill, and I was about to tell what happened, and she just didn't even look at me and give me the pill and say, he must fail. Just take it outside. Take this outside and take it out. Nah. And so I just felt like maybe this is not a good time. So I just kept going with my daily life. And when I saw my little sister eating a pancake, that was a moment of realization. She's 10 years younger than me, and if I ignore this assault, this would happen to her. This can happen to her, and I can never forgive myself. And saying that, I've been going to school with uniform in Japan on public train. It was almost like always, girl student targeted for dropping, but we never could do anything because the law wouldn't protect us, and people around us wouldn't protect us, and we will miss school, we will miss classroom, and what can we do? And so what we do is like every morning we gather before the class starts, we start sharing our story among us. Today this man jerked on me, cut skirt, and so we can process, and that was it. But then all these small assault that are not even small, but then I had to rip through, just came back in a flashback, and see these things I've been ignoring is piling up and coming up, and now this. And this is the life I'm repeating. Have to live like this all the time. I want to say no. And I guess when I realized that how police couldn't handle my journalistic switch went on. Like, what do you mean these things happens a lot and you can take? Right. So, but that switch was amazing. Protection, sealed, letting me not being just a survivor and a victim. I felt so powerless talking about it, and that's true. I was, standing as victim, but I felt like I couldn't go anywhere from there. So serving somehow, questioning as a journalist really, really helped me. And after I read your book, I did realize that bit of similarity. you, I think, had a tool of philosophy, and I know you just briefly said, yes, philosophy did help and also didn't help. So, but I think that part of us, how we could operate, I think, how we know the, I don't know, questioning, putting out there, the wording, helped me.
Yes.
So I don't know how your process of using your philosophy and mirroring your trauma.
Yeah. Well, you were so young and you were able to do that. I was 35. I already had a job teaching philosophy. And yet, we both write about struggling in our professions with certain attitudes about professionalism. So as a journalist, you're not supposed to be telling your own story. You're supposed to be detached and objective and just getting the facts and not getting personally involved. And as a philosopher as well, one is supposed to be objective, detached, right? That's changing. And one of the things I wanted to change with writing Aftermath when I did was the profession. Because philosophers talk about things like personal identity. Nobody listened to survivors, so many who said, I'm not the same person I was before. You know, or an Auschwitz survivor who said, I died in the camps. There is so much actual human experience that can be of use in thinking about things philosophical, like what is a person? What makes a person the same or different over time? And philosophers were ignoring this. So part of my purpose in writing the book was to bear witness. And part of what was to change philosophy. And to some extent, I've succeeded. I mean, in some quarters, it's certainly more acceptable now. And I'm wondering how you feel about the profession of journalism. I mean, is that changing? Have you noticed the norms changing?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote my book, Black Box, and in 2017 when I went public, and it was a time when Me Too movement was happening, and when I went public, it was half a year before, but when I published my book, that was the time it was happening. But for my book, because it was too close, right after the assault, and still right after me speaking to public, and also one of the reasons why I decided to write is because I try my best to believe in our authority, police, prosecutors, and I believe there could be a cover-up or some power involvement because there was arrest warrant issued by the court, but then the police stopped it without no reason. And I've been trying to interview him. I tried to chase him. I never thought I'm gonna chase the high-level police in my life. I'm happy that's not the other way around. But he ran away. He was faster, and I never got the answer. So I decided to go public and ask other journalists, ask other media to investigate, and I couldn't see the result I wished. I think, as we can all feel and know, media often also deal with power, and it's difficult things to talk about. And also, I think that time, before Me Too time, they also didn't know how to handle the sexual violence case in media. So I felt like my word has been edited, or they just been, not being able to cover the case and investigate. So I decided to write. I know it's not, journalistic if you write, but then I try my best not to put my emotions in it. So I put all the whatever I know we have as evidence, and this is what I remember. So just the memory, so I could separate that and just present. So this is what happened. What do you think? You don't have to take my case, but what do you think? How do you see it? So that's what I wanted to do. But with the film, I did have to cross the line as a journalist. First, I was, cringing the journalismness. So I was thinking, I gotta interview the perpetrator. I gotta talk. He should have say of his side of story, his side of truth. And my whole team was like, no, 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 you don't have to do that. But to accept that's okay took time. And for me, telling myself it's okay in the film to be telling one-sided story is okay. And I think I was empowered by watching other directors, journalists also making documentary, reporting from what they see, their daily life. And what you just say, you know, the personal, how we put this personal story into philosophy and journalism, it's changing. You know, a couple weeks ago, I managed to sneak into Columbia University. Today it's so hard. So I'm so happy I did that. And then they were having the talk at the journalism school, J School, saying personal stories are also news. And that was eye-opening to me. Like, we need more of that, because I think we need more story that we hear, this happened to me. And you are the closest person you can tell. And for instance, some parts of the world, you can't go in what's going on in Gaza. You can't just, as a journalist, it's really hard to go there to report, for instance. But then you can still hear local people reporting, and you can listen to that, or sharing their story, that you can listen to that. So I think these personal elements are really important. And I think one thing is that we always have to remember what is the point of the view from the filmmaker who filmed, who is telling the story. So I think that's the work as a viewer, as an audience, each one of us has to do. But I really admire all these new works of personal storytelling.
And I was very much influenced by a movement in legal theory in the US, critical race theory. Especially African Americans, but other minorities were writing about their own personal experiences of discrimination, of harassment, of violence in the US. And for me as a white woman to read these stories, I learned so much more. I learned things that I couldn't read just by reading law review articles or case books, Actually, Patricia Williams came here a couple of years ago. She wrote this marvelous book called The Alchemy of Race and Rights. And that just changed my view of the world, gave me a new perspective. And so I was influenced by people in legal theory who did this before any philosophers were doing it. I also wanted to go back to what you said about these memories of things that had happened to you in girlhood and when you were a schoolgirl or rushing back. I had the same experience. I think sometimes it takes something very dramatic, extreme, right, for one to realize, oh, this isn't so out of the ordinary. These things have been happening all my life. Not so extreme. And it really does change one's perspective. I also was thinking about the scene in the film when you are so bravely at this press conference, right, telling the story. And the way I saw it, you were surrounded by men. There were only men there. The only woman I saw in that scene was a stenographer. And that was something that struck me too after my assault. I mean, I'd been a feminist for a long time, and I was so struck when I was assaulted and taken to this farmhouse. All of the people who were helping me were men. I mean, there were the EMT people, the ambulance drivers, the doctor, the police officer who showed up, and then in the hospital, all of the doctors, and the court, the lawyers, the attorney general, and it just gave me a very different picture of the world, because there they were all helping me. But they were all men, and they were all in charge. And there was something revelatory about that gave me a different perspective on the world. I remember it was after the trial, the chief of police in Grenoble emailed my husband, who was with me throughout the trial, And my husband had written to him thanking him for his job. He did an excellent job. And the police chief wrote back to my husband saying, of course I did it. It was part of my honneur d'homme. It was the honor of man. My manly honor required me to do this. I'm thinking, maybe you should think more about what being a man in France involves. It's like, okay, some men go around beating up women, raping them, trying to murder them, and then other men go around piecing them back together and helping them maybe pursue a legal case. But there was not much thought put into what is this entire system? Like, what role does patriarchy have in this? Why is this happening to so many women? Why aren't they being believed? I also wanted to ask you about some more personal things about your recovery. I was struck by similarities in things you said in the book and things I experienced when you were being assaulted. And you, at one point, you couldn't breathe and you thought, I'm gonna die. And then you had this image of your mother seeing this image on the news of your death and dealing with the news that you had been murdered. And that gave you this resolve to fight. It's like, I'm not gonna let that happen. And I had a similar experience in the ravine. I reached this point where I just thought, I can't take this anymore. I would rather be dead. There are some things worse than death. And I had this image of my husband, right, seeing my body in the ravine, and it just galvanized me. It's like, and it's not just that, but you talk about your relations with other people during your recovery as being absolutely essential. And I felt the same way. My experience in the aftermath of my assault really deepened my view that the self is fundamentally relational, that we exist as people only in relation to other people. Mm-hmm. And that becomes so clear when you're trying to piece back together a self, and you need the help of other people to do it.
Yes. I always feel like I felt what I felt, the way, how we describe about, I felt like I was murdered. Another way I felt like was my whole body is home. And I think that the ground level, this where, is the bottom baseline is my sexuality, it's sexuality. And when this base is violated, it's hard for house to stand still. And so it's hard for family or partner, your friend to live together. It affects them. And it also affects people around your neighborhood, your neighbors. And it's the chain of drama. And that's one of the work I try to do with the stop motion, which is now exhibited in the hallway of library, because I didn't know how to describe this. But then when I heard a couple of years ago, Dr. Mukwege, who won the Peace Prize, who has been working and helping as a doctor who sexual survivor in Congo, he said, rape is the cheapest weapon. It's because you can destroy not just one person, but people around. And that's what it is. That's what it is. It's a chain of. It's not just affect you. It affects people around you.
Yes. And I think more attention needs to be paid to how it affects everybody, but including men and men who are involved with women. My husband, Tom Trezeis, who's a French professor at Princeton, has just completed a memoir about the last 30 years of supporting a survivor of gender-based violence. And it forced him to confront all of the rules of masculinity that he was raised in. He had to be strong, he had to be the supporter. He didn't even cry for years. I thought, why is this not affecting him? And he was traumatized. There's secondary trauma that affects the people around us, the people who love us. And when I listened to rape survivors on campus who would come to me, I was kind of a lightning rod for them. Often they would say that their parents weren't supportive, or their mothers couldn't believe it. And when I had a kid myself, I kind of grasped that. It's like it's so hard to believe that the world is such an unsafe place, that someone that you love and want to protect could have experienced something so awful. Mm-hmm. So it's not just, I don't know what the statistics are. If it's 1 in 5 women or 1 in 7, and men are raped too. Exactly. Many more people than that are seriously affected by the assaults.
Yes.
And often people don't pay attention to them. When I was recovering, my husband he was out, he was working, he was teaching, and people he would run into, they'd say, "Oh, how's Susan doing?" Nobody said, "And how are you doing?" Right? And I think that's very important to keep in mind.
Yeah. And to remember, in Japan, the male victim wasn't even seen as a victim till 2017. And also because this maleness, you gotta be strong, it was so hard to come out, to say, to seek for help. Yes. And it's just, it's too, so many things to talk about. That trauma, that generational trauma, the societal trauma is there, and I think we share.
Yeah, and you also talked about how approaching this as a journalist, investigating your own case, gave you a kind of protection, made it possible for you not to face all of the reality of what happened. I recall you saying at some point you were talking to someone, I don't know whether it was a therapist or in some other context, and the person said, you were telling your story, and said, "Yeah, but you sound like you're talking about somebody else." And the first time I saw a therapist, who was a trauma therapist, and I told the story, she said exactly the same thing. It was like there was no affect there. I was just describing, this is what happened. And you in the film really display, you demonstrate how painful that process is of realizing, oh my God, this was me. And coming to terms with that. I didn't know if you wanted to talk any more about that process, but I found it very powerful the way you discussed that and depicted it.
So that's what I wasn't ready and I didn't do in the book. I want to present this book as purely what I can hand out as evidence and everything. And so with the film, to really express and face myself as a survivor was toughest thing. We had 450 hours of footage, and it was just like hardcore therapy session, exposure therapy session that, some parts I don't even remember, and it's amazing how trauma works, make you forget, and I gotta dive into this. So that was really, really interesting. But then what I wanna make sure is that I didn't wanna, necessarily traumatize myself and traumatize others. So I try not to put many visual violence. Or I try to not to describe what happened in the beginning from me. You don't need to know about it in a film from the beginning. And so I let my other friend lead the statement towards the end, because what happened wasn't really important to me. Yes. I forgot what I was talking about, but yeah.
Oh, thank you.
What was it? What were we talking about?
Oh, just this process of
coming
to realize.
Is the magic of trauma. Forget about it.
Oh, I do it all the time.
It was difficult. And but once I complete the editing, editing itself took 4 years. And every time I couldn't handle, I fall asleep. So my amazing editor, Emma, one day she got couch, so I could just boom and come back and keep working. And towards the end, I didn't sleep. Towards the end, I felt like this is the story I want to tell. And once you have that, I felt so powerful. This is it. This is how I wish to tell. And once I had premiere at Sundance, it was first time I felt like this story, now it's shared. I was watching with other audience. It's no longer my story. It's detached, and that was really, really amazing feeling, and knowing also how powerful it is to have your own language. You own the narrative, to tell your own story, to use your own language, to use your voice. It's so empowering. So that only learned after finished making, but it was really, really hard. Hard things to face every day.
I know a number of people have questions. We have a tradition of calling on students first, so I'm going to pause for a bit and ask people to raise their hands. And I will try to keep track of who's raising their hands. And
Yes.
because we're live streaming this, I'd like you to wait until somebody hands you a microphone. But if you raise your hand, I will point to you, and the people who are the microphone runners will find you.
Out here, out there.
Get these two?
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Is it on?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and for your time today. My question is, how did you keep yourself and your crew safe during your investigation or your recording of your journey, and also in all of the other investigations or journalism you've been involved in?
How did I?
Ensure your safety for yourself and for others.
Well, I at some point I didn't feel safe, so I moved away from Japan. So I stayed in London, and I asked other journalists also join to film. And the main person who filmed was the producer and became a good friend of mine. And she was actually the one who called me after I went public. She had a Japanese friend and said, "Why don't you escape from Japan now? We have we can provide you a place to stay." So that was really helpful to just really also be away from where I was, but also surprised, like, I don't know you. Are you sure you want me to, are you okay to live, And, but yeah, I ended up living at the producer Hannah's office under her IKEA desk for 3 years. And she became like a human shield for me. She was Swedish, she's tall, she's blonde, and she's like, no one can harm Swedish citizen. And so she was really helpful. But no, we never knew how we can protect ourselves. We never knew how serious these threats are. So one birthday, I got like a tank top that would protect you from stabbing. I'm like, wow, what if this happened to my face or neck? I didn't know, but it was tank top. So yeah, but what I felt was, if we keep documenting, if we put it in a crowd, it will get there. If something happens, if we keep documenting. So in the beginning, I didn't even think about filmmaking, but first 2 years was purely protection reason to document what police was doing, because I was scared. So you had to think about that. Documenting was the way to seek safety.
Thank you for your time. My name is Andy.
Hi, Andy.
Really appreciate you being here, and also the sponsors of the event for making this possible. So I'm from Seoul, South Korea, and in South Korea we have something called 회식, which is a corporate dinner. So from what I could infer from your documentary, it may have been the case that you may be coming from one of these corporate dinners. Now, it is my understanding that it is very taboo to reject a senior's drink. It's prevents you from being promoted, you get stigmatized. What can corporations, but also individuals, do to foresee and prevent harm for sexual violence? And what are the responses that people can take in the event that something like that occurs?
I know it's so culturally deep-rooted, especially South Korea, Japan, that the drinking culture, it's part of your work. And it's like you said, it's unavoidable because they work daytime and they need to talk something, and that has to be nighttime, and that's when you get the time. And that was why I was meeting that guy that nighttime. But I was thinking other people is gonna be there, so I was so surprised because in the email he was kind of trying like make it sounds like that, and it wasn't. So, but of course I couldn't leave because just him, and so I'm sure so many of maybe you have maybe been through something similar. And another thing I feel like, especially in our culture and maybe other parts of the world too, you have to drink. And that's really toxic. In a business, you can't say no, you have to drink. And yeah, that's not cool anymore, right? But then I think maybe we should come up with a script and make a short film or anything that make it fashionable to say, hey, drinking not cool, because like because like that's, if we say no, then yes, we don't want to destroy the relationship, or we start coming up with really fancy tea fusion drink that makes it look like drink that makes you feel good so you can talk more. But I don't know how to make it, how we can change the culture a bit.
It's changing here in universities. I mean, in part because of sexual harassment of students and women graduate students and faculty. There's much less drinking at receptions or parties or dinners, but very consciously.
Yeah.
We don't want some people to be at a disadvantage.
Right. But
because
also,
of this.
it's not about just drinking. It's about you have a choice to say no and all right. And I feel like that's the kind of constant training that you have to do and feel okay to say no, not this time, but maybe different time. But yeah, it's a certain business scene. I know how hard it is, and that's why I don't work for corporate.
Okay. Yes. Thank you again. Just to echo that. So I'm in Professor Brison's seminar right now about feminist philosophy, and recently we discussed a feminist philosopher who argued that some pornography, specifically like rape fantasy pornography, can be considered like that itself constitutes violence or harm against women. And you mentioned that you didn't want to include like graphic depictions of the trauma so as not to like re-traumatize yourself or your audience. And I'm just curious as to your thoughts about like depictions and potential like glorification of sexual violence in media more generally. And like what harm that can or does do.
I really feel like if you've been there, you wouldn't put it. Why would you want to see it, right? So there are many great films exist that deal with this difficult matter, but when I see it, I feel like, did you have to put it? There's so many other arty way to put it, and so I don't know. I question, but then that's the film. Let's talk about pornography, because in Japan we don't really teach sex at school. Sex education in teachers' guideline, it says teachers should teach after when sperm and egg meet. So they don't talk about the important stuff before. Of course, they warn the STDs and stuff, but the consent and the communication and what, So that's missing. But then can you imagine that was then our age of consent was 13. So once you were 13, you were, you were said that you know everything, even though you weren't told. And now it's 16, but it's the same. But what I want to say is that so we all have access to pornography since it's all over internet, and I think that became our sometimes textbook, right? And I had an interesting conversation with my German guy expat who lives in a bubble in Tokyo, who had several Japanese girlfriends, and he told me once when he was dating this Japanese woman, she said, no. So she stopped, and she was like, why do you stop? And so he starts, and she said, no. So he stopped, and it went on. So he's like, are you okay? What's going on? And then it turned out, she told, that's how men likes it. She told, I don't know if she learned through pornography or she learned through her previous boyfriend, but saying no and being sort of playing like a rape scene she thought it's the how she would please men. And that was surprising for both of us, and we talked about it so much. And because I guess we don't talk about this openly and we don't talk about consent, there are really, it influenced us. And after that, I start asking all my friends, do you do that? and because, but then some of them, even they don't say no, they feel like it's better, sexier in Japanese way, you kind of like shy. And it's really controlled by what we have consumed, even though that's not the right thing. And I think that misconception of this no can be really dangerous. And in Japanese, even we have this saying called iyayo mo suki no uchi. Iyayo, no, meaning you like it or you saying yes. So like, where's the consent? And so that's really, really dangerous wording, I think.
Miles, did you have a question?
Hi, Shiori. I'm Miles. I'm also in Professor Brison's class. In the talk after the movie, you talked a lot about the power of language and how it can encode hierarchies and mannerisms that make certain forms of expression very challenging. Can you elaborate a bit about how speaking multiple languages has impacted your ability to share your story in your intended fashion? And as a slightly convoluted follow-up, do you think that the presence and usage of a new language in a society can be used as a tool to deconstruct hierarchies, or that the norms of that society will ultimately flow down into that new language?
Alison, do you want to say something? So Alison is amazing translator of my book, and you know many languages. Do you want to say something?
Well, it's a very interesting question. Thank you, Miles. That was a very complicated question, I would say. I think obviously you express yourself extremely articulately in English as well as in Japanese, but what we've talked about all along has been it's very present in the book, and from the time that we've been doing appearances together, we talk about the challenges of consent or lack thereof in Japanese, and with the structure of the language as well as the hierarchical and the respect or the relationship, the hierarchical relationship between people, between your perpetrator and yourself. But I think that you've also talked about the changing, the way your personality shifts when you're speaking one language or another. And I think that many of us here in the room, if you speak other languages, you may have experienced that yourself. That culture is so embedded in language, and you express that, you emote that, and I think talking about it, what we're doing right now, talking about it in your kinds of questions, are the kinds of things that will work to shift that.
And you write about that in the book, that even during the assault, you'd been repeating, please stop, but then you went into English and said, what the fuck are you doing? Because, as you write, I realized only later, but I'd always used honorific language with the assailant, assuming he would one day be my boss. It makes sense in Japanese. There is no register for a woman to use in protest that puts her on an equal footing with a man who is her superior.
Oh no, I know.
And you also talk about this term quasi-rape, which I hadn't heard before. And then when I Googled it, it said this is like a term in South Korea as well as in Japan.
It changed now, finally. But
It's not used anymore.
Yes, that was quasi-rape, yes. When the alcohol or drug, or when you're in unconscious stage, then it happens, then that's quasi.
Is there now greater awareness of that? I'm also thinking of the Dominique Pellicot trial in France, which really brought attention to rape with drugs. Is there a greater awareness in Japan now about the prevalence of that and how it's not quasi anything, it is rape?
Yeah, so the law does no longer use the word of quasi, and yay to that. And also, police finally have the test kit to test the date rape drug. But not everyone knows it. So there were official letters, so some of the a supporter carried the letter and show I know you have it, because otherwise not everyone knows. So you have some of the person I know who goes to police with the survivor, they always have to carry the statement. So it's so crazy. And I think quasi, I never use quasi than this topic, so I don't know how you use it in English, but in Japanese, jun means secondary, right? And it just sounds so it was, another language problem. And when I was talking to a group of freshmen yesterday, one girl was saying there was TED Talk about how language shaped personality. And that was interesting to hear. And also many people say that I'm much nicer when I speak Japanese. But I'm same, but I guess I tend to be more nicer. But when I thought about that, I was just daydreaming. So if we all speak Scandinavian language, are we all gonna be feminist? Is that what's gonna happen? I don't know. So, but it's really interesting to think about, because it's somewhat maybe the grammatical thing, or somewhat more intuitive words. I think. Yeah, the language can shape how you express and how you behave and how, I think it's really interesting.
Your work and your writing and your filming and photography has given us all new ways to think about things and to express things that might have formerly been unspeakable. And we're all just so incredibly grateful.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming, but thank you so much.
Already ending?
Yes.